90.3 WHPC now presents Law You Should Know. The law affects every aspect of our lives, our home, our jobs, and our recreational activities. Now, learn about the law and how to protect yourself against the loss of your liberty or property, and learn how to stand up for your rights and seek compensation when you have been wronged. Your host for Law You Should Know is Attorney Kenneth J. Landau, a past dean of the Nassau Academy of Law, and frequently lectures to lawyers on ethics and avoiding problems with clients, and to the public on how to choose and use lawyers. This is Law You Should Know on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Hi, this is Ken Landau, and welcome to Law You Should Know. Welcome to the 33rd season of Law You Should Know. Our special guest today is David Paseltiner, and he's a partner with the law firm of Jaspan Schlesinger, one of Long Island's largest full-service law firms. And for over 75 years, they have been providing legal services in the area of commercial litigation, banking, financial services, education law, and many other areas, with offices located in Garden City and Westchester County. David, welcome to Law You Should Know. I know you had the not-for-profit corporation law practice group with the firm, and tell us how you got involved in that. And we want to tell our listeners about if they're involved with a nonprofit or they want to start a nonprofit, how they can keep it operating legally and help it to grow.
Great. Now, thanks for having me, Ken. I appreciate you having me here. I've been practicing law for about 30 years now. And when I was a young attorney straight out of law school, my senior partner was a big proponent of giving back to the community. And he was involved with an organization at the time called Education and Assistance Corporation over in Uniondale. And he said, I want you to get involved. It's important that we as attorneys do good for the people we serve and the communities we serve. And he volunteered me, in effect, to go on the golf outing committee of that charity. And over the years, it's now been 30 years on that board, I've devoted a good chunk of my career to giving back to the community. I've been on the board of Long Island Cares, the March of Dimes, the American Heart Association, and what is now EAC Network. And we as a firm, and I as an attorney, think it's important that we serve the people who live in our community.
And as just a message to other lawyers out there who may be listening, even if you don't have the non-for-profit expertise that you do, it's very good to spend time doing charity. It's very good for your personal well-being. It's a very good way for networking and the good feelings it will create in doing good for the community.
Yeah, you're right, Ken. There's a lot of benefits. And, it's not just a matter of writing a check for a not-for-profit. There's a lot of ways people can serve not-for-profits, volunteering at events, helping with dinner committees, getting donations to the not-for-profit.
And you may make contacts in law and business who can help you down the road, or potential clients in many areas of law, and you're also doing good.
Absolutely.
So now you are one of the leading attorneys for nonprofits, and if someone has an idea or a cause, maybe they want to set up, they believe in donating books or sending money to their home country or for disaster relief, how can they take that idea and start it and follow their passion?
Yeah, I think a lot of people will be surprised the scope of not-for-profits that exist both in the state and nationwide. We tend to think of not-for-profits as the biggies, Heart Association, cancer, March of Dimes, things like that. And essentially in New York State, there are two types of not-for-profits. We have charitable not-for-profits, which are those type of organizations, and we have non-charitable, which can be something like a library. It could be a group of people from a given location. It could be a group of people with an interest in a specific hobby or profession. And you can go out and form either type of not-for-profit in New York. Depending on what sort of not-for-profit you're forming, you may need to get prior approval of a various state agency. I mean, if you and I want to go out and start a library, we need a Department of Education approval. If we want to start an organization to prevent cruelty to animals, we actually need the ASPCA's approval. So depending on what you want to do, you may need to get consent. But assuming you get the consent, you file a certificate of incorporation with the Department of State, and you can form a not-for-profit.
And charities, large and small, and regardless of the purpose, really need to make that filing?
Yes, and you want to be specific in what your organization is trying to do, because the IRS, if you apply for 501c status as a tax-exempt not-for-profit, is going to know exactly what you're doing. You just can't file a general thing. We're a charity. Similarly, your donors, if you're going to be out there soliciting money from people, your donors are going to know specifically where their money is going. So the more precise your goal of your organization is, the better off it'll be.
And once you do form that, it does provide tax benefits to your donors and the money you receive as a charity.
Right. There are a couple of different types of tax benefits you get. So let's assume, for example, you're forming what is customarily thought as a not-for-profit, something that's going to help out people with specific affliction. In that case, you can apply for what's called 501c3 status. And not only will the income that organization earns be tax exempt, but donations that people make to that organization will be tax deductible to those people. If you're simply, let's say, again, a library, our purchases may be tax exempt, but we may not necessarily get tax deductible donations.
And one of the important things for a founder or an organizer or someone who has a dream about starting a charity is to put together a board. Who should be on that board?
Well, it's a function largely of what you're trying to accomplish with your not-for-profit. I'll give you a good example. EAC Network actually began over 50 years ago in Port Washington. There was a bunch of 4 or 5 women who identified a need for a program that would serve at-risk youth who were not being served by the school district. So these were concerned parents who got together and said, here's a cause, here's something that needs to be addressed. How can we help it? And over the years, it's grown and grown, but it was originally driven by people who have kids who had a need for this program. I was formerly on the board of Long Island Cares, the Harry Chapin Food Bank. And Harry Chapin was very interested in addressing the problem of hunger on Long Island. And we live in one of the most affluent communities in the nation, and yet every night, people are going to bed hungry. And he said there's a need for this. And it was very much a grassroots organization. So depending on what your goal is, you can attract people of an interest, because you want to attract people who are really going to be dedicated to helping the foundation, the charity.
And again, if you're out there and you have some charity and time and it in your heart, you can volunteer for these groups. If you're a lawyer or another professional, or maybe you have some other skill or you just want to do good, you might be able to help out with their board or a particular project that they're going to undertake.
Right. I find it very interesting from my personal experience, because you can look at charities as 2 types. There's the national organizations, the Heart Association, the Cancer Society, and then there are local organizations, the Food Bank, the EAC Network, and they really have different needs from the people on their boards. Look, as a practical matter, all not-for-profits are looking for funding, particularly with government cutbacks in recent years. So if you can write a check, you'll be welcome to any board. But if you're going on the board of a national organization, a lot of the focus there is on fundraising. These are big companies. They have outside attorneys. They have outside accountants. They may have 100 or more, 200, whatever number of employees. So as a board member, you're looking more as what can you give or get in terms of monetary obligations. Whereas if you join a local organization, they don't have that infrastructure. So if you're a real estate broker and you're joining a board of a not-for-profit that rents or is interested in buying real estate, you can really play a role there compared to a national organization. If you're an accountant, you can offer your accounting services. If you're a lawyer, I've worked on programs for EAC where my legal skills were used. Whereas if I was on a national board, they have plenty of outside attorneys. They don't need me for that. So a lot of it is, what your interests are and what you can bring to the table.
And you also might be able to recruit. You might be able to help run a particular event or recruit people for it or recruit sponsors or donors for an event.
Right. One of the best ways to get involved with a not-for-profit in terms of where to start is getting involved with an event. A lot of not-for-profits want to see that you have an interest in the organization, a commitment to it, before putting you on the board. So find out, is there a golf outing? Is there a dinner gala that you can participate in? Join the committee and make that as a stepping stone to getting on the board.
And even more basic than that, you can just show up. You can buy a raffle ticket.
Oh, absolutely.
You can show up with a few friends, show up with your firm, just have fun, do good for the day. And if you like the cause and the people, you can take it to the next level.
Right, because one of the concerns being on not-for-profit boards is, why is somebody participating? Is it simply self-promotion that they want to get on the board so they can use this in their resume? Or is it really a genuine interest?
And as you mentioned before, we need help. We need people to do all these things now because funds are cut back. There are many people in need and many programs are in need and people need help with different things.
Yes, I mean, compared to when I began as a board member 30 years ago to today, the level of cutbacks across the board, and it's not just governmental money, it's private money coming in. Look, people are strapped in terms of what they can afford to give. Corporations are strapped. There's only so much out there, and there are a lot of not-for-profits competing for similar dollars.
And the need is growing, so they need even more money, and costs are going up, just like it costs us more in the supermarket. And for gas, the costs to the charity of providing aid have gone up.
Yes, I mean, people forget sometimes that not-for-profits are businesses. They have employees whose salaries have to be paid and are looking for raises. And that's one of the challenging things in the not-for-profit world is trying to attract and retain talent, because the private sector can afford to pay more than the not-for-profit sector.
And we're going to come to that in a minute. I just remind our listeners, you're listening to Law You Should Know here on 90.3 FM, WHPC Radio, the voice of Nassau Community College in Garden City, Long Island, New York. We're starting the 33rd season of Law You Should Know, and you can hear this program if you missed part of it or want to tell someone else about it, or many of our other shows at our website, nccradio.org. Our guest today is David E. Paseltiner. He's a partner with the law firm of Jaspan Schlesinger, located in Garden City, and he is the head of their not-for-profit group, and they're a big corporate firm, and they also are helping. As in honor of their 75th anniversary, they have helped a wide range of nonprofits this year. And tell us about how and why your firm did that this past year.
Right. Well, 75 years was a big milestone for the firm. And we said to ourselves, what's the best way to really give back to the community and to thank the community for their support of our firm over these years? So what we started doing was taking a look at the organizations that we've supported over the years. And there were quite a few. So we went out to those organizations and said, look, we'd like to continue to show our support, both in terms of what you've done in the past and going forward. And we made a donation to those. But it also was, frankly, an opportunity for us to take a look at other organizations who may have flown under the radar over the term of our history, and saying, well, where else can we commit to supporting the community? So it was a combination largely of organizations we've supported in the past, but also some new ones.
And in terms of fundraising, what are some other things that a small nonprofit or a growing nonprofit can do to try to raise funds? Well,
there's the traditional golf outings and dinner events. And there's such a glut of those. There's a golf outing going on, every other day, it seems like, during the summer season here. So it is a challenge. You have to try to be innovative. For example, EAC Agency, a couple of years back, did an event where people, rappelled off the side of a building as a fundraising event. We had an indoor miniature golf outing at the Garden City Hotel, because everybody does the outdoor outings. So you have to try to be innovative. A lot of not-for-profits have done food events, because look, people love to eat. So you get a bunch of chefs together, you rent out a hotel ballroom, and you charge people to come in and sample from 20 different restaurants.
And maybe on a small level, you just have a cookout or bowling or sell cookies or something.
You have to start somewhere, right? And you can't
have a bake sale.
Exactly. And look, it works for the Girl Scouts.
What about if someone's, do most people start these nonprofits, let's say, as a volunteer? Do they sometimes need to be paid on a part-time basis by the organization? Can they pay other people to do some of the legwork?
Yeah, of course. And again, it depends where you are in the state of your history as a not-for-profit. As a startup, you're not going to be paying salaries to people. You're not going to have the money off the top of the bat to do that. But over the years, as an organization grows, you're allowed to pay reasonable compensation. You're going to need staff. But certainly from the beginning, it's going to be a lot of volunteer time.
And what are some other challenges and legal needs as an organization grows, and that someone like you can help them to keep everything legal and help them grow and do more good work?
Well, the interesting thing about not-for-profits, particularly as they get larger, is they're kind of a hybrid. Yes, they're out there to do good for society, and they're not out there to make money for themselves, but they're a business. They sign contracts. They have employee issues, HR issues. They may be leasing property. They're buying equipment. They're getting bank loans. So pretty much everything that a business goes through, a not-for-profit goes through. But with the added complications of having to comply with various laws, New York State, IRS, laws that are specific to not-for-profits. So you need somebody who has the experience to say, your bylaws need to provide this. You need to file this type of form. And it's both attorneys and accountants. There are accountants who specialize in not-for-profit corporations because their filings are different than corporations that are just for-profits.
And if someone who has a charity is renting space or signing up for an event as part of that charity, Should they do it as an officer of the charity, sign a contract or agreement to protect themselves from, let's say, personal liability?
Oh, absolutely. It's no different than any other corporation. When you do have a not-for-profit, you're incorporating. So it is a type of corporation, just not a business corporation. It's a not-for-profit corporation. So any contract, any commitment somebody makes on behalf of that entity needs to be in the name of that entity, and you would sign as an officer of that entity.
What are some other problems that that you've had to resolve for charities or prevent over the years, or what are some of the other more interesting charities out there, especially on Long Island?
Well, in terms of problems, one of the challenges for a not-for-profit are finding board members. Ideally, you have a diversified board. Ideally, you have a board that's very committed and active. And it's both a challenge in terms of getting board members and keeping them engaged as board members. People go on a board, and then at some point they stop showing up at meetings. They kind of fade away from the board commitment. So it can be a challenge for board members to kind of phase out board members who have kind of lost that passion. On the other hand, you don't want to lose board members because you don't want to alienate somebody from serving the charity. So one of the things a number of boards that I've been on has done is form kind of an ancillary or auxiliary board and say to somebody, look, we know you can't make the board meetings because that's critical. Your funders want to make sure your board members are committed. And one of the best ways to show committed is showing up at the board meetings. And that could be 8 to 12 times a year. So you may have people you say, look, you've been on the board for a good period of time, but the time has come. We see you're losing the passion. We want to retain you. We want your involvement. We want your commitment. But we're going to put you on an auxiliary board. We want you, available for us to give us your thoughts, your feedback. But we're going to take away from you the need to show up at board meetings. We're going to relieve you of that obligation.
And maybe those people can just be involved with one or two events they believe in and they have talent for.
Because you don't want to turn people off. You don't want to say, we don't want you involved anymore. But as a board, you need to have a quorum. You need to have meetings. And if people don't show up, it can become hard to make a quorum.
And what are some ways they can recruit and grow potential and future board members?
Well, a lot of it is just community outreach. If you're involved in a particular cause which has a specific goal, for example, you may have a doctor who's an expert in a disease that your charity is trying to fight. Maybe that person wants to go on the board because it's a natural connection between what you're trying to help and what that person does for a living. You may have a charity that can need a specific expertise in an accounting area where you can reach out to an accountant and say, look, we have a very unusual situation. We really could use your help. It was kind of funny. I went on the board of Long Island Cares because they were about to buy a building in Hauppauge. When I first showed up, they were meeting at the old Pilgrim State Institution, and it was kind of creepy at night to go there, an abandoned mental institution. And after I joined the board, the accountant who recruited me said, by the way, we're about to buy some property. Would you mind donating pro bono legal services to help us buy the property? And that was how my connection got started. So they reached out to me knowing I could help them.
And it's good for lawyers to do pro bono work. It's part of our sort of requirements, and it's a good way to network and show off our legal skills and our ability to get things done.
Look, it's a win-win for everybody because our talent is needed, but as you said, it's also an opportunity for networking.
And most firms will recognize the good involved and the importance of doing it.
And we certainly do at Jaspan. We want to encourage people to go out, spend time, make a commitment to the community.
And this is probably true for all firms besides law firms. And as we've said, it's good for network and everything else. I just want to remind our listeners, we're talking with David Paseltiner, and he's a partner with Jaspan Schlesinger and in Garden City, Long Island, New York, and he also is the head of their nonprofit group. As we emerge from COVID and as we've been dealing with COVID, are there additional challenges that nonprofits have faced? Has the need for nonprofits grown?
Well, I certainly think the need has grown. It was a particular challenge during the COVID period. How do you keep your operations running? For example,
and fundraising too.
And fundraising, exactly. But, for example, one of the programs that EAC has is a supervised visitation program where if you have parents who are in a matrimonial disputes and can't be trusted to be alone with their children, we would send people to meet with them so there's somebody to oversee that. Well, that needs to be done in person. And if you have a rampant COVID, it presented a real challenge to operating that program while COVID was going on.
And what are some resources? Obviously, you are a wealth of information and you help guide larger nonprofits. For someone who's thinking of starting a nonprofit or growing a nonprofit, what are some resources available to them?
Well, there's a couple of great free resources, and free is always nice, particularly when you're dealing with a not-for-profit. The New York State Attorney General's office has a website at charitiesnys.com. Charities, plural, nys.com, with a lot of information about how to form a not-for-profit, what it means to be a not-for-profit director, and a wealth of other information. And the IRS also has a very good website available at irs.gov/charities-and-nonprofits. They have the forms there for you to apply for exemption from income tax as a not-for-profit, and a lot of other information available. So both of those are excellent and free resources.
And if a charity reaches the next level or a couple levels above that, there's people like you who can keep them out of trouble and help them grow and comply with their obligations under the law.
Right, because the obligations do change as you get larger. You may be required, instead of having reviewed financial statements, you may need to have audited financial statements. You may need to file different tax returns. So as you grow, it's not the same as before. Things do change as you get larger.
And what are some of the other ways that you've had to help nonprofits professionally?
Well, one of the things I do is I write bylaws because those are critical to the organization of the board. I use my experience as a board member of numerous charities over the last 30 years to help give advice on how to deal with problematic issues for the board. It could be issues dealing with personnel of the agency. It could be issues dealing with fellow board members. There's a lot of complications that can arise in the course of a not-for-profit because, again, you have personalities. You have people who may be giving money but not showing up for board meetings, and it can be a bit of a minefield on how to navigate through that.
And non-for-profits, as they grow larger, may have personnel issues and real estate issues and other issues that a small business has, or a large business.
Yes, the same as any other business. You can have human resources issues, contracting issues. There's pretty much any problem that you could have as a regular corporation, you can have as a not-for-profit, with some added complications on top of it.
And are there any? You mentioned some of the newer ways to run money. Are there any other newer ways or to run money that, in the 21st century?
Well, online giving, look, some of the old tried and true methods still work. Direct mail campaigns, things like that. There's also a push to get people to donate money in their wills. It's a great way to make a charitable gift to a not-for-profit. If you're concerned during your lifetime that you may need funds, you could set up a donation in your will that a not-for-profit can benefit from. So a lot of not-for-profits are trying to get people to think about that as another aspect of their giving.
And nonprofits also have many of them have an educational mission to educate about their good work, to educate about a problem in society or a needy group in society, or a particular, let's say, disease or a problem in the world.
Yeah, a lot of it has to do with being able to get your message across. And for some not-for-profits, that's a very easy thing to do. If you're the Heart Association, people know what you're there for. If you're a food bank, people know what you're there for. You have other organizations which may not have that clear of a mission. There may be agencies which have multiple missions. You think of United Way, for example. It's not just one problem they're trying to solve. The same for EAC Network. EAC has over 100 programs. And to try to explain to somebody what they all are would be impossible in a 2-minute conversation.
And are there organizations that may give grants to nonprofits, large or small?
Yes, there were a number of grant giving, and it could be governmental grants, it could be private money, private foundations. I have a client of mine who set up a private foundation, and he funds children's programs. He's interested in helping kids in need. And you would submit an application for that grant, and there's a lot of information that goes into it, and it's a real kind of a skill and art to grant writing, but it's out there.
And there might be people on your board who have that expertise or that skill. But how can someone with a charity, especially a small one, find out about sources of possible grants?
Look, a lot of it nowadays is online research. There are websites that, first of all, if your funder is specifically aimed at a specific problem, you can pretty much find that by searching that problem, and your funder should pop up on the internet. But there are other organizations that assist not-for-profits in finding funding.
And maybe you want to make a targeted pitch with a medical group or a legal group or a group of concerned people who are deal with that issue.
Right. And that's one of the important things is knowing when you're making a pitch what your potential donor is interested in. Where's their passion? You may be something that is a wonderful organization. You may be fighting hunger, but their passion is not hunger. Their passion is with the elderly.
So you've got to find people with your passion.
You need to do your homework.
Who recognize your passion.
Right.
Any other way to target your message?
Well, like I said, a lot of it goes back to your organizational documents. When you first start a not-for-profit, you need a business plan like any other business. What is the aim of your not-for-profit? What is your goal? What are you trying to accomplish?
And also, if you have a particular program you're trying to fund, sometimes that might have appeal to someone, in the community with a certain group, helping a certain need. Right.
It goes back to why you starting up this not-for-profit. What's your interest?
I just want to remind our listeners, we're talking to David Paseltiner. He's a partner with Jaspan Schlesinger, and he heads their nonprofit practice group. David, can you just give us your website in case someone wants to find out more about your firm?
Sure, happy to.
And, your particular expertise.
Right. We're www.jaspanllp.com. That's spelled JASPANLLP.com. And Ken, as you said, I'm the head of the not-for-profit practice group. I'm also the head of our corporate and commercial practice group. So a lot of the problems I deal with, just in terms of my for-profit clients, translate over into helping not-for-profit clients.
And we've talked about it before, but it's good for everyone, especially if you can't give money, you can give your time or expertise to help nonprofits and fill present or future needs.
And that's what's great, because if you look around, you'd be amazed how many not-for-profits are out there on the island. And frankly, they all need help. And if it's not dollars, it's your time, it's your expertise, your skills, even just showing up at a committee meeting to give your input on something.
And even just showing up at an event and coming yourself or with some other friends to donate a few bucks or do some good or solicit pledges.
Right. And you can go out and golf, or you can go out and golf at a golf outing for a not-for-profit.
Or just a little walkathon or something for those non-golfers.
Exactly.
Or bowling, whatever it is.
Yep, exactly.
And by helping in an area, it really helps lift everyone, so to speak.
Like I said, I think it's important to be involved in the community to give back. And the need is not getting smaller, it's getting larger every day. And I think it's important that people find a passion, something they want to particularly help with, because once you do that, it's going to make you that much more involved with the not-for-profit.
Okay, I want to thank David Paseltiner for being our guest on Law You Should Know. As I mentioned earlier, this is the beginning of the 33rd season of our program on WHPC 90.3, the voice of Nassau Community College in Garden City, Long Island, New York. And if you missed any portion of this show or you want to tell someone else about it, please go to nccradio.org for podcasts of this or podcasts of many other programs on Law You Should Know and many of the other shows of interest and importance here at WHPC 90.3. And I would just like to encourage everyone to get out there and do good, whether you do with a few bucks or burn some calories or contribute in any way you can to help the many charities here on Long Island and around the country. And please join us next week at the same time on 90.3 WHPC for another program on Law You Should Know.